Hi everyone, it's me, Joshua Clater, hanging out here on LegitMTG.com's Twitch channel. Today, I think we're going to do something a little bit different. I don't actually think we're even going to play a game. We might, though. What we're doing tonight is I have been pretty obsessed with the Blue-Red Through the Breach deck that I've been playing a couple of times here and there recently on stream, and I'm going to go ahead and show you the main deck as it stands now. I've made a couple of changes. I took out a Through the Breach and an Emrakul for additional copies of Snapcaster Mage. I wanted to see how those worked in the main. Hopefully they're not terrible. If they are, we can easily make the switch back to Through the Breaches and Emrakuls. However, the sideboard is not great. There's room for improvement here, so we're just going to go ahead and toss that entire thing. When I'm building sideboards for decks, I typically sit down and look at the top X amount of decks in the metagame. And it's a lot easier to do that now, thanks to sites like MTG Goldfish that have so much data. You can easily see what's being played online and what their expected percentages are. Like the Is It Phoenix decks, their metagame percentage right now is 8.25, whereas something like Eldrazi Taxes, that's 0.74% of the metagame. Now, with a format like Modern, you can't necessarily be prepared for every deck in the format. You've only got 15 cards in the sideboard. You would need like a 30, 45 card sideboard to be able to have all the answers you need, or be willing to run like one-ofs. But they better be extremely high impact one-ofs. So we're looking at, and let me see how this looks. Give me 1 second. I'm going to bring up my Internet Explorer. So we're looking at Is It Phoenix right now. We've got the threats, which are obviously the creatures. It's a burn light deck. Gut Shot only deals 1, Lightning Bolt deals 3. So the chances of you dying to burn are relatively low. So the threats are in stuff like Monastery Swiftspear, a flipped thing in the ice, recurring Arclight Phoenix, and Crackling Drake. Well, for the most part, Anger of the Gods deals with Monastery Swiftspear and Arclight Phoenix, especially exiling them. And Anger of the Gods is already in the main deck. Blood Moon's not exactly high impact against this deck because they're well ready for it. They've got their basic mountain, the island, they've got Manamorphose. So they're able to cast all their red spells still, with stuff like Spire Bluff Canal and Steam Vents. So we may think we're pretty well prepared for this deck due to Anger of the Gods and our land destruction, but they're low. Their mana cost for the deck, especially when they're recurring Arclight Phoenix, is, you don't need much mana. And you get to play you get to play Gut Shot for free, you get Manamorphose, so that you're cycling that, and you get to pick out the colors you need for your third spell, so they just bring back Arclight Phoenix and beat you on the face again, unless it's exiled. So what are we looking for here? Well, Thing of the Ice, it's an 04, fairly important. Crackling Drake is also an X4. So something like Rending Volley is good against Is It Phoenix because it kills Thing in the Ice, it kills Crackling Drake, but it doesn't do anything against Swift Spear, and Arclight Phoenix. So we would expect to keep something like Anger of the Gods in, so it could do the heavy lifting against Phoenix and Swift Spear, and bring in something like Rending Volley against the Crackling Drakes and the Thing in the Isis. And really, our land destruction plan isn't that great against this deck, so we would be looking to bring out Blood Moons and Stone Rains, but we would keep the Molten Rains in because they deal damage. And if we just take out the Blood Moons and Stone Rains, that is 6 slots we have open. And I don't think we would want to be bringing in a full playset of Rending Volleys. So now we would be looking at what else could be good against Arclight Phoenix. Well, everything in their deck minus the Crackling Drake costs 1 to 3 mana. In fact, let me amend that statement. Everything but Crackling Drake and Arclight Phoenix cost 1 to 2 mana. And Phoenix and Drake cost 4. So maybe something like Trinisphere would be worth looking into. That also has the benefit of being incidental hate against stuff like Storm. So while I sit here and talk these things out, the cards that I think that I want against Izzet Phoenix are Trinisphere, Rending Volley, and that could be Combust. I'm just going with Rending Volley because it costs 1. And can't be countered. And maybe Graveyard Hate. If we are putting Phoenixes in the yard, then removing them before the 3 spells get cast, fairly important as well. We can't really, this is just a stock list. And I'm just going off that. But yeah, the threats. This is a threat-light deck, or a threat-light deck, but it's very efficient and consistent. So with Trinisphere, they can't cast more than 1 spell a turn, pretty much, because each thing costs 3. With Rending Volley, you're slowing down their blue stuff. With Graveyard Hate, you're keeping Arclight Phoenix from coming back into play. I can't really think of anything else that would be great against these. So let's move on to Dust Shadow. Again, here's a stock list. This is another deck where something like Trinisphere would do some really good work. Dust Shadow costs 1. Snapcaster costs 2. Angler rarely gets cast. It's a cycling card. Or not Angler, Street Wraith, rather. Rarely gets cast. It's a cycling card. Angler costs 1 million, but it's going to be less than 1 million anyways because they're doing fetch lands and cheap spells. Faithless Looting, Fatal Push, Inquisition. Everything is cheap. It's also very consistent, very powerful, very good at what it does. So again, something like Trinisphere may be good here. Graveyard Hate may be good here. Just to counter Gurmod Angler coming out. I don't know why I keep writing down Graveyard Plate. Now, Death Shadow is a huge threat. We don't have any lightning bolts to potentially deal with it. We don't have any removal for it. We're just against Death Shadow. We're looking to get our Through to Breach resolved, finishing up with Emrakul. And their best thing against that is Stubborn Denial. Now, maybe something like Guttural Response, which would help protect our Through the Breach from Stubborn Denial could help. They've got a large amount, and by large I mean 6. I mean, for modern, 6 is a lot of discard spells. Plus, they get access to Kolaghan's Command. So they've got a large amount of disruption. So something like Leyline of Sanctity that you could play for free to give yourself hexproof would strand all that discard in hand. They're not taking 2 from Thoughtseize, so it slows them down just a little bit. And you also have incidental hate in Leyline of Sanctity for stuff against burn. So that's moving on from Death Shadow. We go to Ironworks. Ooh, this deck. Ooh. Remand only does so much. The land destruction only does so much. This seems to me like another deck where Trinisphere would be pretty good against it. Everything outside of Ironworks, of course, is very cheap, and Spine. So you're making them pay more mana than what they're getting from Ironworks whenever they're casting something. Which, again, slows them down. It doesn't make it impossible for them to go off, but it does complicate the math. It does complicate the loops that Ironworks goes through in their big old boring turns. Of course, they, after board, they have Nature's Claim. I don't even think Blood Moon's super effective against Ironworks. It stops Buried Ruin. I mean, that's pretty okay. But they've got Negate and Swan Song post-board. So they don't have a lot of stuff to stop you from doing what you want to do. So again, this is another deck where we want Graveyard Hate. We want a instant speed way to deal with their loops. And they also have a crap ton of artifacts, so we're going to want to have some artifact destruction. Something like Shatterstorm. It costs 4, it's a sorcery. I don't know if Pithy Needle does what I want it to do. So, there we go. Thanks, Google. I think they're mana abilities, so let's check out this Pithy Needle Guide to Modern. Okay, yeah, so Pithy Needle does nothing against KCI. So, it's because it's a mana ability. So they're adding mana to your mana pool. So it doesn't really do much against their main card. Does something like Sorcerous Spyglass stop? No, because they also activated unless they're mana abilities. So the 2 cards that I would want the most of don't really do anything, I guess, in that particular matchup. So would we want something like Counter Magic, which makes us... I mean, we clearly don't want Anger of the Gods in games 2 and 3 against KCI. I mean, it might be good game 1, but... I mean, we may want it against Psy. Just to clean up before a Through the Breach turn happens. But I can't really see me wanting to keep in Anger of the Gods. I would rather just cast Shatterstorm, get rid of everything, Through the Breach, and go. But is there a mass artifact destruction spell that we can play at instant speed in red or blue? I mean, we could play Cyclonic Rift, but that costs infinite. And by the time that we're getting the mana to cast Cyclonic Rift, we've been dead for 30 minutes. So, I don't want to splash a color. I don't want to bring in something like Ancient Grudge. So let's check Destroy Artifact. Text red or blue. In Modern, we've got a Braid, which is pretty good. It also does work against creature decks. Biforce, sorcery. Crush is interesting. It's instant and it destroys a target non-creature artifact. So you could blow up like KCI in the middle of the loop, but that doesn't seem great either. Detonate. We're not playing any goblins, so Trash Master doesn't seem great. Granulate does the same thing that KCI or that Shatterstorm would do. It just seems like everything that you want, like mass destruction wise, is a sorcery. Release the Gremlins is too slow. The XX really... Shattering Spree might be okay. Smash to Smithereens deals damage and is an instant. Smelt doesn't deal damage and is an instant. Vandal Blast costs more than Shatterstorm. So oh gosh, this is awfully depressing. So yeah, we would want Graveyard Hate, Artifact Removal, and that kind of stuff for Ironworks. If we could tax them, that's great. It's looking like... I mean, so far we went through Arclight Phoenix, Dust Shadow, and Ironworks. And those are decks that we want Turnosphere against. Okay, cool. Let's move on to Dredge. They don't really run anything in the terms of Disruption. They're a speedy deck, very graveyard reliant. So, I mean, really the only thing I want against Dredge is Graveyard Hate. So it's finding the best Graveyard Hate that can go against a lot of decks. Like, do I want Surgical Extraction? Probably not. Like, I want to just mass remove graveyards. We've got Tormod's Crypt, we've got Scrabbling Claws, we've got Relic of Progenitus, we've got so many different options. Like, we can run Leyline of the Void if we want to stick with, you know, drawing uncastable cards. So yeah, against Dredge, all I want is Graveyard Hate. I can't really think of anything else that I would want. I don't want a crap ton of land destruction, though, so... I don't know. Again, their spells are cheap. Trinisphere may not be terrible against Dredge, either. It would keep them from casting these things. I'm gonna put Trinisphere with a question mark. Let's look at Burn. Burn, we definitely don't want Blood Moon in. And we don't want the Land Destruction in either. Their threats are Guide, Swift Spear, Eidolon of the Great Revel, and a crap ton of spells. Everything, again, costs 3 or less. So, I mean, Trinisphere would be good against Burn, too. Leyline of Sanctity would be good against Burn. If they can't burn you, then they're just drawing dead cards and such. And we've got answers to the creatures in Anger of the Gods. So we would probably want some kind of, like, spot removal. Now, Rending Volley does absolutely nothing against Burn. So would we want to bring in something like Lightning Bolt or Flame Slash or another kill spell like Sweltering Suns? I don't know. So let's move on to Burn. I think we've figured out the threats and such. Let's take a look at Humans. Humans runs predominantly white as he passes over the green and black and green. It's a predominantly white-based deck, so something like Rending Volley and Combust could be good there. They don't have a lot in the way of basic lands, so Blood Moon's good here. But Aether Vial kind of negates Blood Moon. So we would want an answer to Aether Vial. I don't want to bring in Shatterstorm against Humans. I just feel that that's really bad. And I don't know if I want to necessarily devote board space to targeted artifact destruction. Maybe with the rise of KCI again and the amount of stuff like Tron and Hardened Scales Affinity, that something like Shatterstorm could be improved upon with something like Smelt or any of the instant speed artifact removal spells. But bringing in a cheap way to deal with artifact spells while also having the expensive way to deal with everything, it seems kind of strange. And having answers for a lot of artifacts and then having answers for some artifacts doesn't seem great. So what I would probably do, instead of adding another spell like Shattering, not Shattering Pulse, Vandal Blast, or Shattering Spree, is something like a Braid, as it gives you options. If you need to kill the Aether Vial that's in play, great, cool, kill it. If not, you can kill a Dork, which also works out pretty well. So between Anger of the Gods and something like a Braid, I think we've got this matchup pretty well scouted out. We could bring in Rending Volley as additional removal, a Braid to deal with Aether Vial or Dorks in play, and then just finish them off with Through the Breach. So we've talked about the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Actually, Trinisphere may not be terrible against Humans either. I'm just like this video or like this stream is just doing nothing but convincing me that Trinisphere needs to be in every modern sideboard deck now. So let's look at the next 6. We got Tron, Amulet Titan, Hardened Scales, Hollow One, Bant Spirits, and Storm. Tron, I actually feel really good already about Tron. Because we have Simian Spirit Guide, we get to accelerate our land destruction. I like this life-size Velociraptor, by the way. If someone wants to donate that to me, I would do something with it on stream. But Tron, I feel really good against. Now, I know that a lot of people are like, yeah, you just land Blood Moon against Tron and they're done. And that's never the case. Never, ever, ever the case. Because they just draw out of it. And then they destroy it with Nature's Claim and you're done. You're looking at Karn and Ugin and Wormcoil Engine. And you're like, oh, where did everything go wrong? It's like, you didn't put any pressure on. So, Blood Moon's nice. It's a safety net. But it's not. Because it allows players to play. It's too much of a crutch. And they keep like a hand that has Blood Moon and then nothing. Because it has Blood Moon. There's not much that I want against Tron, though. We've got Remand, we've got the Land Destruction, we've got Izzet Charm, we've got Through the Breach Emrakul. I feel pretty good against it. Like, we're going to be taking out Anger of the Gods and bringing in something else because Anger of the Gods does stone cold nothing against this deck. Now, what would we want to bring in? Would we want to bring in counter spells? Would we want to bring in artifact removal? I like the idea of having counter magic that's more than Remand. But I'm not entirely sure that we need it. Like, do we need negates? Do we need ceremonious rejections? Oh! I mean, I would want an answer to Thought Not Seer, maybe? But really, just finding the Through the Breach Emrakul seems like the best bet against them, and keeping pressure up on their lands. Like, I feel like we're, for the most part, pre-boarded against the deck. Even though we're not, because we have Anger of the Gods, and no one would ever in their right mind bring an Anger of the Gods against Tron. So we'd basically just be looking for better than these 3 cards. And so far, looking at potential sideboard cards on this list, there's nothing we're adding to the sideboard potentially that are better than those 3 cards, and that needs to be fixed. And that may be fixed as we look on in other decks. But right now, there's really nothing outside of counter magic that I want for Tron. So let's look at Amulet Titan. This is another matchup where we want something to deal with a limited amount of artifacts. So we want something to deal with Amulet of Vigor. That's where a Braid would come in. Because... actually, is Anger of the Gods good against them? No, I don't think it is. It's not terrible. Is this another matchup where Trinisphere shines? Again, Amulet Titan has a lot of the same... they're not the same deck as Tron, but they rely on a lot of non-basic lands to power out their Primeval Titans. So, if you were able to stop them with Blood Moon early, and then apply pressure on their lands, you're not in a bad place. So this may be another matchup where all we want is just really spot things. So, a Braid and Counter Magic. Hardened Scales Affinity. To me, the biggest threats in this are Welding Jar and Hardened Scales itself, because the creatures aren't that great. Anger of the Gods deals with a lot of them. A Braid will deal with the rest of them. So, a Braid is now moving its way into the sideboard. Shatterstorm, again, would be fine against them. And you want Shatterstorm because it blanks Welding Jar. You can't regenerate off of Shatterstorm, if I am correct. Destroy artifacts that can't be regenerated. So it blanks Welding Jar, which is just fine. It's wonderful. We keep pressure up on their nexuses, so they can't just like one-shot us with an Inkmoth Nexus. And we may want, like, I think a Braid would actually help shore up holes in the removal. Huh. This matchup seems fine. Blood Moon's not great, but it does turn off the Nexuses. And it turns off Horizon Canopy. And it turns out, oh, maybe Blood Moon is great. It just does, it's not as great as it could be because they're still casting their stuff. Because everything's colorless. Well, generic. Alright, let's look at Hollow One. This is one of those matchups where you think you want Graveyard Hate, because it's bringing back Bloodghast and Flamewake Phoenix, and I mean, the Delve spells. This matchup, in theory, also seems fairly simple. We have the Anger of the Gods to clean up the small things. They're not recurring anymore because they've been exiled. So we would need to control the Tasigur and the Gurmag Anglers. And the Hollow Ones. Oh, Hollow Ones controlled with a Braid. Tasigur and Angler are controlled by Through the Breach Emrakul. It's just surviving the crazy nut draws to where they have Hollow One. Like, multiple Hollow Ones. So maybe a Braid is... Yeah, a Braid's almost a lock for sideboard now. Alright, let's move on to Banned Spirits now. Now, most of their stuff, small creatures, Aether Vial. So again, a Braid would be coming in. Not Shatter. So we've got Anger of the Gods to deal with. All this stuff. This is a matchup where Rending Volley really shines. Because it can't be countered. Does Trinisphere shine in this matchup? I mean, Path to Exile is a dead draw. If they're hard casting their stuff, yeah, everything but Captain, Mage, and Queller costs less than 3. So Trinisphere may not be terrible here. I don't know if I'd be willing to try it, though. Like, in this matchup, I'm taking out the Land Destruction because it's not great. But I'm keeping Blood Moon in because it has a better chance of disrupting them based on the amount of non-basics that they have. Got a Braid, Rending Volley, and Trinisphere. I think that's all that I want. A Braid deals with Aether Vials. Rending Volley deals with everything but birds and Noble Hierarch. Selfless Spirit's the most annoying creature because it gives things indestructible, and that lets them survive anger. Storm. We definitely want Trinisphere here. I could see bringing in Rending Volley to deal with barrels and Electromancers. The Land Destruction is surprisingly effective against Storm. Trinisphere even more so because everything costs 3 and is only giving them 3 mana, so they're not actually really getting any mana advantage. Alright, we'll move past that. We're past humans too. Alright, so the next 6 decks. Looking at Azorius Control. I mean, Azorius Control is 2.6% of the metagame. This matchup also isn't terrible already, because despite having 8 basic lands, they're surprisingly weak to Blood Moon. Terminus doesn't really bother me unless they do it on my Through the Breach turn, and then I'm really angry. They have a little bit of counter magic. Cryptic Command is crippling on the Through the Breach turn. But we've got Izzet Charms. And we've got Remands. Path to Exile does nothing. Vendilion Click is a bit of a nuisance. Gosh, if we weren't so island heavy, Boil would really shine here. They just don't have what I like to think is a lot of really good answers to what we're trying to do. I mean, Anger of the Gods would come out, but what would I want to come in? I guess Counter Magic? Gosh, I wish Stifle were legal. Do I want to bring in Rending Volley against 4 creatures? It does also kill Celestial Colonnade. It's not terrible. But it's not great either. Maybe a Bounce spell? Let's move on to the Rock. Cheap, cheap, cheap. But big. Alright, we want answers to Liliana the Veil, because that is the biggest threat against us, I believe. Like, we can race Tarmogoyf, and I've raced multiple Tarmogoyfs. You just early through the breach. You blow up. Blood Moon's not terrible against them. But Leyline of Sanctity is pretty good, because it makes all their discard in game 2 bad. Leyline's really the only thing I've been bringing in against them too, which means we may need to work in Metamorphose into the main deck. Because post-board, we can't actually cast our Leyline of the Sanctities if it gets bounced, or if we draw one and they've been destroyed. And Metamorphose would help us get through the deck as we're trying to get our Through the Breach Emrakul built up. Jund has pretty much the same issues as the Rock in Liliana and the targeted discard, which are the biggest problems. So again, Leyline of Sanctity is what I would want against them. And really not much more. Traverse Death Shadow. They've got Liliana, they've got a lot of targeted discard. So Leyline, like in the non-traverse Death Shadow, we want Turnosphere, Graveyard Hate, Guttural Response, Leyline of Sanctity. I can't imagine wanting much more than that either. It's just beating them before Death Shadow beats us, and with our Through the Breach plan, that's typically what happens. We get through the breach and Emrakul them. But with the Death Shadows plan, they're dealing so much damage to themselves. Jeskai control. They are colder to Blood Moon because they're 3 colors, but they've somehow managed to put in the same amount of counter magic and also settle the wreckage. So we'd probably want the same things against Jeskai that we do against Azorius, and maybe counter magic, because again, Anger of the Gods needs to come out. It's a dead draw. And it doesn't get any better post-board. It does kill Geist of Saint Traft, which kind of a worry. Alright, so Living End. It's 1.33%. We want Graveyard Hate. And we want Trinisphere. And that's pretty much it. If they Demonic Dread or Violent Outburst while Trinisphere is in play, they probably can't cast the Living End, because it also costs 3, I believe. But let me make sure. Searching for Trinisphere and Cascade. Okay, yeah. He said as he looked up a 2009 ruling. So, we're past Living End. And I think these are the last few decks, because they're at 1% of what one could expect. So 4-color Prism, Shatterstorm, pretty much does the Lore's work there. We definitely want a way to deal with Ensnaring Bridge post-board. So yeah, I think I would be bringing in Shatterstorm and a Braid. And I'm pretty glad that this deck has moved away from the whole Lantern control. I don't know why it's moved away from that, but I guess Witchbane, I don't know. If Witchbane Orb came to play for free on your first turn, that would be better than Leyline, because you could at least recast it. Yeah, like I think Shatterstorm and a Braid's just pretty much what we need. So Titan Shift. We would want to replace Anger of the Gods. Blood Moon does surprisingly good work against this. So maybe Counter Magic. Infect. We've got Anger of the Gods. We've got a bunch of pump spells. Trinisphere is pretty good against Infect. So it keeps their pump under control. A Braid's pretty good against Infect. Because it's just target and removal. Like, Blood Moon's surprisingly not bad against them either. It's just controlling the Glistener Elf to keep them from casting post Blood Moon. Ad Nauseam. Everything that I've played against it is we're controlling Phyrexian Unlife and Lotus Bloom and Pentad Prism. Quick Blood Moons help. Counter Magic helps. This matchup's not terrible. The Land Destruction is still surprisingly good against them. So I would probably want Leyline's not terrible. It keeps Lightning Storm from targeting you, but it doesn't stop the Laboratory Maniac kill. Rending Volley could be good against that kill. Because again, we don't want to Anger of the Gods post-board. Alright, Marty Pyromancer. This is the same as the other black-based decks, except they're better against Blood Moon because they're built with Blood Moon in mind. So, Leyline. Trinisphere. I think we'd actually keep Anger of the Gods in this matchup. I don't know. Like, this is the one matchup that kind of scares me the most because, like, they have so many tokens. And if they can get past an Annihilation trigger on Emrakul, they can just block and then keep doing what they're doing. Blood Moon would probably come out in this matchup. Kiki Jiki, is it? Again, no Anger of the Gods. Rending Volley does hard work here, does a lot of heavy lifting. Rending Volley will kill the Exarch target, or the Kiki-Jiki target. Again, we don't want Anger. Blood Moon's not terrible against them. It could make Kiki-Jiki easier to cast. So I think Rending Volley and Counter Magic here is what we want. Mono Red Phoenix. We want a lot of the same stuff that we have against Burn and against the previous Phoenix deck. Blood Moon is just the worst here. It turns off Ruins. Lava Coil? No. No, we just need answers to Swift Spear and Phoenix. And we just clean up with... A thing that we may want post-board is another wing condition. Because getting Emrakul Surgical Extracted doesn't seem like the best plan. And Through the Breach Surgical Extracted seems fairly awful too. So let's write down alternate win. Is it control? There are a lot of counter magic. We just blow up lands and Blood Moon them. Sultai Mill. Another matchup where Leyline will do incredible work. Can't mill you if they can't target you. And they can't Crypt Incursion away your Emrakuls. God, I can't believe Surgical Extraction is 47 tickets. We want answers to Ensnaring Bridge. So a Braid would come in. And Leyline would come in. Blood Moon's probably staying in. They've only got like 5 basics. And it keeps them from getting double triggers off Hedron Crab from their fetch lands. There's only 6 fetch lands in this deck too. That doesn't seem right. Seems like you'd want more to take full advantage of Hedron Crab. So yeah, Leyline. And like game 1 feels almost unwinnable. Because they have Extraction and they have Crypt Incursion that they can actually cast targeting you. And gosh, I don't want to Archive Trap and then, or fetch a land and then get Archive Trapped out. Of course, I don't actually think I have fetch lands in here. And I think that's right. Alright, so let's move past Mill. Mono Bluetron is Mono Greentron, but with counter magic. And Mindslaver. This is a matchup where Shatterstorm feels better. But it doesn't feel great. Like, Blood Moon's really good. Then we just focus on destroying the blue sources. But again, Anger of the Gods is something that's not great in this matchup. And Anger of the Gods, I mean, it's good in game 1 and against a lot of decks. Like, it's good against Arclight Phoenix. It's good against Dredge. It's good against Humans. It's good against Hollowed Skulls. It's good against Bant Spirits, it's good against Living Endish stuff. It's good against Infect. It's decent against a lot. I mean, like, it's great against those decks. It's decent against some others. And it's a dead draw against some more. So it's worth having in the main deck. Like, the 3 slots aren't going to be make or break things unless we draw them all 3 in a row in crucial turns against, you know, the critical, against the decks that they're not good against. So, yeah, against Mono Bluetron, we want to keep up with the land destruction plan. We want to keep up with our disruption, but we also want to be mindful of the counter magic that they have. Maybe more Is It Tron? Oh no, Is It Charm would be terrible against them because they hit Tron and then they're paying 2 extra on something they have 10 mana for. This is probably a matchup where we want something like Guttural Response to keep our Through the Breach from getting countered. Alright, so we've got a lot of really good sideboard ideas, even though they're... We went through the top 29 decks. You know what? I'm okay with that. Going through 29 decks and figuring out sideboard cards that we want against them seems pretty good. It gives us a lot of overlap in the modern format, and we can find multiple threats post-board against them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and log off here. I'm going to get to work on the sideboard, taking a look at all the notes that I made and all that great stuff. And you all, and I'm going to edit State of the Program on puremtgo.com. So, thanks for hanging out on some of your Thursday, and we've bled over to Friday here in the Eastern Time Zone. I will be back tomorrow. We will definitely be putting this deck in through a modern league with the newish sideboard stuff. Spoiler, there's probably going to be Tronosphere. And that's it for me tonight. So thanks for hanging out with me on Thursday. Make sure you stop by store.legitimatetg.com for great deals on Ravnica Allegiance stuff. Make sure you check out the spoiler card that Zuby posted on the site today. And even better, make sure you have a great night. I'll see you next time. Thanks for hanging out with me. I'm Joshua Clater for legitimatetg.com, and we'll see you tomorrow.